In all, how many people did you kill?
I have no idea.
No idea. You lost track?
Okay, so
Some of the most feared members of the deadly Mexican cartels are the Hitmen, or Sicarios. They do the dirty work no one else wants to. Rivals, enemies, politicians, and even tourists. No one is safe when a cartel hitman has a target on your back. And this gruesome job is not only done by men. Many women have joined the ranks of the most notorious killers. Even children are being trained and sent to carry out violent executions. Could you imagine having your childhood stolen away from you before it's even begun? Let's explore kids who kill and the youngest hitman who decapitated and tortured Narcos. Be prepared for what you're about to watch. December 2nd, 2010, one of the Mexican cartel's hitmen is apprehended and arrested while trying to leave the country. As reporters gathered around the scene and the camera started rolling, the whole world looked on in shock as they caught a glimpse of the boy who had become a feared hitman. His sister was with him and had been arrested too. She had been accused of helping to dump the bodies of her own brother's victims. When police searched him, they found mobile phones that contained the most terrifying footage of the young killer in action.
¿Cómo te llamas, bro?
Edgar, me Lugo,
¿Cuántos años tienes?
todo café.
14. ¿Dónde te tuvieron? ¿Dónde te agarraron?
Ahí en el aeropuerto.
¿A dónde ibas?
A San Diego.
He didn't make it to his destination. There are far too many children operating for the Mexican mafias who simply take advantage of vulnerable kids to use them as they see fit. It was estimated in 2019 that around 30,000 children are currently recruited by the cartels in roles such as lookouts and street-level drug dealers. Even worse than that, they use children to act as hitmen. The reason they target the young to do their dirty work? Often the children they recruit are desperate and susceptible to manipulation.
Going on 13 years old the first time I took a life. It's just one day, got invited to Mexico. I didn't know what was going on at first, and I see about 6 people kneeling down.
Potential recruits are taken to a training camp, and there, the most horrific acts of inhumanity were performed, often by children as young as 10 or 11, and all in the name of training.
Then the individual, the person in charge, they start laughing, and I think they saw that scared, panicked look in my face and asked me if I had ever killed somebody. And I said I had, knowing that I had never took nobody's life. So he pulled out a handgun, told me to kill that person, the one kneeling in front of him.
Recruits could spend months in the mountains learning everything they need to know to become the toughest and the most bloodthirsty Sicario there is, and failure meant certain death. Failures, dropouts, and those who fell out of line faced the ultimate punishment and were often used as live target practice themselves. One anonymous former young cartel member later spoke about the traumatic training of a hitman, saying, "They took away everything left of me that was human and made me a monster." Cartels find their new recruits on the streets, in bars, and just about anywhere. And some don't even know the full extent of what they're getting involved in until they were already at the camp, simply being told they were to train as bodyguards.
You guys train. Show you how to shoot, how to do everything.
Yeah.
Well, the training I received, it's almost all the same, but you don't practice with paper targets. It's a constant war zone. You practice with live targets.
And when the training is complete, they're sent out to complete missions, earning potentially thousands of US dollars per week. There are many young hitmen who have operated with the cartels, leaving many children spending their childhood shooting bullets instead of home movies. Their stories are full of tragedy and heartbreak.
Jóvenes, ¿cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel,
Eric y Manuel, ¿de dónde son originarios?
de Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del Cartel del Golfo.
El cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
Underage children have been described as cannon fodder by Saskia Niño de Rivera, who is the co-founder of an organization called Reinserta, who try and help at-risk Mexican youngsters. Reinserta conducted a study of young offenders, and the results are very worrying. Out of 89 interviewed, 67 claimed that they had begun their life of crime between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. Some even said they were killing and disposing of bodies as young as 10. Although the world of the cartels is a very secret one, stories of these child sicarios have emerged over the years. So let's take a look at some of the most notorious of all.
The people we were using as targets were rival cartel members. There used to be 50, 60, sometimes over 100 people, just like cattle for the slaughterhouse.
Rosalio Reita was only 13 years old when he first took someone's life. Handed a gun by a cartel member, he was ordered to shoot a man. He took aim and fired. But this didn't horrify Reita. In fact, he later said he actually enjoyed it. He was now a part of the Los Zetas cartel, and before he turned 17, he had a personal body count of over 30 victims. Reita was born in 1990 and had grown up on both sides of the Mexican-American border. He was introduced to the Gulf Cartel by his friend and fellow hitman, Gabriel Cardona.
Gabriel Cardona says he was 15 years old when the Zetas drug cartel recruited him to kill. He was part of a secret crew of hitmen made up of American teenagers living in Laredo, Texas.
They would both become part of a specialist team of children Sicarios. All of them were of Mexican-American origin, and all of them had no place left to go after living in broken homes and with abusive families. One advantage of using Mexican-American kids was that they were fluent in both languages, allowing them to operate easily on both sides of the border. Both Reita and Cardona would become part of a 3-person cell of hitmen, along with an unknown cartel member. But they would not be stationed in Mexico, where the cartels operated. They would all live together in and around Laredo, Texas, and they were paid $500 to sit and wait for the call to action. Detective Garcia, who worked on the case, even went as far as to say, there are sleeper cells in the US. They're here in the United States. For every time they took a life, they would be rewarded with thousands of US dollars and kilograms of narcotics. They could earn even more for more important targets. Reita and Cardona would soon attract the attention of the police after a string of killings in Laredo, where 7 people were mercilessly gunned down. At first, police thought they were gang-related, but when an innocent man was killed, police found the evidence they needed to bring their killers to justice. Noah Flores' death came too soon. His life cut short by a teenage hitman following orders. The intended victim was Flores' half-brother, and this was a case of mistaken identity. In the suspected shooter's getaway vehicle, they found fingerprints foolishly left on a cigarette packet, and when they discovered the killer's identity, police came to the terrifying realization that Mexican cartel hitmen were now living and working within the United States. Cardona was apprehended and would eventually plead guilty to the death of 7 people and conspiracy to kidnap and kill. Reita managed to escape justice at first, but he soon became suspicious that his own bosses wanted him dead. Living in fear, he decided the best thing to do was to hand himself in. So while he was in Monterrey, Mexico, on another hit, he called the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency and surrendered himself to the authorities. Cardona was sentenced to 80 years, and Reita, who pleaded guilty to 2 murders, was given 2 sentences of 30 and 40 years. Not only was their childhood stolen away, but their adult life will also be spent inside a prison cell.
And their story is a cautionary tale, incredibly frightening and disturbing on many levels.
But the next hitman on our list is not only the youngest, but he's also one of the most deadly. And you won't believe what this boy did under the orders of the brutal Mexican drug trafficker, El Negro. Edgar Jimenez Lugo was born in San Diego, California in 1994. Although he was born in the United States, he grew up in Mexico, and his upbringing was not a happy one. Living in poverty, Edgar had nothing to look forward to and very few prospects. His parents, David and Yolanda, had tried to earn a living but addicted to narcotics, and it was so bad that when Edgar was born, they found traces of cocaine in his system. The family life was so traumatic that Edgar and his sisters were sent to live with their grandmother when he was only 18 months old. He was a bright child at school, praised by his teachers for his behavior, but by the time he was 11, his sister introduced him to El Negro, and his life would change forever. He was recruited by the South Pacific Cartel, although Edgar later claimed he was kidnapped and forced to carry out assassinations. Both of his sisters were already working for the cartel, and Edgar joined them. He became one of the youngest and most notorious Sicarios. They called him El Ponchis, or the Cloak, due to his ability to carry out assassinations in a stealth manner, and his case would come to highlight the rising trend of children used as cartel hitmen. He beheaded victims, cut their throats, and beat and tortured them. Sometimes he even filmed his crimes, and it was this footage that brought the attention of the police. Edgar was hiding out at a house in Tejalpa with other cartel members. 1 week after Edgar released a YouTube video showing him beheading a man with a wooden stick, the police stormed the house. 6 were arrested, but Edgar managed to escape. That was until he tried to escape the country, and he was apprehended on the way to the airport. The Mexican press interviewed him in what many later said was a shocking lack of proper care for a suspect who was so young. Even so, he answered their questions in a casual manner, unfazed by his own handiwork.
¿A los cuántos días empezaste a ejecutar?
Los 11.
¿Perdón?
¿Tú eres el que sales en el video golpeando a un sujeto que está colgado en una casa?
Sí.
¿Quién te daba órdenes de golpearlos, de ejecutar?
Negro.
El Negro was Julio Padilla, a reputed drug trafficker who authorities say has been fighting for control of the narcotics trade in Morelos, and Edgar's sister was dating Padilla. Not only that, she was part of a gang known as Las Chabelas, whose sole job was to dispose of the bodies of the executed victims on freeways and streets around Mexico. He openly bragged about being paid $3,000 per hit and even claimed they often chose innocent victims, proving no one was safe. This started an investigation by Mexican authorities that led to the eventual arrest of Edgar and his sisters. But this case of Edgar only highlights a problem that had left many youngsters scared for life, both physically and mentally.
¿Dónde aprendiste a ejecutar, a golpear? ¿Te drogabas?
Me drogaba el negro.
¿Te drogaba el negro? ¿Desde cuándo te drogaba el negro?
Desde los 12.
It's an interesting parallel that Raita, Cardona, and now Edgar had all served 3 years with the cartel before arrested or handing themselves in. Paraded around the cameras immediately after his arrest, he admitted to his crimes in every sordid, bloody detail.
¿Cuántos ejecutaste, dices?
4.
¿Cómo los ejecutaste?
¿Eh?
¿Cómo los ejecutaste?
Los regollé.
The media frenzy exploded, with many outraged that someone so young could be responsible for such shocking criminal acts. But the outrage would be worse when he was finally sentenced under Mexican law. Because of his age, Edgar would only receive 3 years in prison, which is the maximum he could receive. By 2013, he was a free man, or boy, as he was only 17 at the time. Once again, he hit the headlines worldwide.
Even in a country ravaged by years of drug cartel-fueled violence, it was a shocking scene in Mexico 3 years ago. A baby-faced American teenager accused of working as an assassin for the South Pacific drug cartel was paraded in front of reporters. Edgar Jimenez Lugo was just 14 years old when this video was filmed. Jimenez Lugo is known by the nickname El Ponchis. He laid out gruesome details of his life in organized crime.
His release was just as televised.
He was quickly deported back to the United States, flown to San Antonio, Texas, where he disappeared back into American society. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials say they helped facilitate his return, but say privacy laws prohibit the agency from releasing more details. El Ponchis was born in San Diego. He's a U.S. citizen. He served his prison sentence and does not face any criminal charges in the United States, so he's free to move around like anyone else.
His release once highlighted the problem of the cartels hiring children as killers. Between 2000 and 2019, it is estimated that 21,000 children were murdered in Mexico, showing the stark reality of just how savage the cartels are. These children will never regain the youth they've lost. People like Edgar had been so conditioned to kill that it's likely they will never lead normal lives again, even when they are released into society. With no clear solution in sight, how long will it be before another is paraded around for the whole world to see? Do you think the kids will ever be the same again? What can the Mexican government really do to stop them? Let me know what you think about this case in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and don't forget to turn the notifications on so you can keep up with every chilling case.